On this edition of Independent Sources, is the new mayor ready to stand by promises made to the city's minority communities?
I think that he's going to be able to deliver in terms of seeking the $500,000 and up tax to pay for pre-K schooling. I don't know that he can win it, but I think he can put up a good fight, and that's almost as good.
And the battle for equality when sexism goes viral.
These searches come as a shock. I think it comes as a shock to many people that what you see as popular opinion expressed to a certain extent, of course, in these searches is so negative and is so discriminatory and it goes as far as an outright denial of rights to women.
Those stories and more coming up on Independent Sources. Welcome to Independent Sources. I'm Gary Pierre. Mayor-elect Bill de Blasio's historic victory had its roots in a campaign that addressed New York City's yawning income gap and chastised the police's use of stop and frisk in Black and Hispanic communities. So it was no surprise to many observers when just over 90% of Hispanics, 70% of Asians, and nearly all Blacks voted for him. I sat down with the investigative journalist Tom Robbins. We talked about the challenges ahead for Mr. de Blasio and whether or not he will heed this minority mandate. Tom, de Blasio has just been elected mayor under a lot of promises, idealism. Can he deliver on a lot of the expectations, if not the promises?
Well, I think he's going to deliver on some of the bigger promises that he made that relate strictly to policy.
Such as?
I think that he's going to be able to deliver in terms of seeking the $500,000 and up tax to pay for pre-K schooling. I don't know that he can win it, but I think he can put up a good fight, and that's almost as good because he knew going in that it was going to be an uphill battle. So I think he'll get a lot of credit just for like bringing that fight to Albany, making it like New York City versus Albany interests, hopefully getting the governor on his side perhaps and being able to pull that one off. That's a long shot, but I think in terms of his own political stature, he'll measure up just for being able to bring the fight. In terms of stop and frisk, which was the other signature issue that he really waged his campaign around, it's simply going to be a question of choosing a police commissioner who's in sync with him, who agrees to rein in the procedure in a way, and then, this is the thing which is going to be uncontrollable, to hope that crime doesn't rise. And that'll be the one thing that I think is going to be largely out of his control, and anything can happen, but he's going to take the brunt for it regardless. Other stuff like income inequality, that's a much more difficult task.
And how do you tackle such thing? I mean, this city has been income inequality for so long. Can one mayor change that?
No. One mayor cannot. But what you can do...
How can you address that?
Yes, he can address it, and he can make it, and he already has, I think. He's made it an issue that he says, I will, from City Hall, try to close this income gap and make New York a more equitable place. And there's a lot of ways to do that. One is, we had 12 years of a mayor who really didn't care too much about tenants, people who rent their apartments. Even though there's still over 1 million of them in New York and who mainly are middle-class people who are trying to hold on to increasingly unaffordable homes, Bill de Blasio can make a big difference in this city simply by who he appoints to the Rent Guidelines Board, who bring rent increases and vote on them every year. He'll be able to send a big message with that. He's going to be able to, I think, introduce further, he said he will, more legislation to be able to increase pay for sick leave in some areas and increase a living wage for more brackets of income earners who work at jobs that are city subsidized. I think those marginal areas he can have an impact. But in terms of the broader income inequality, the 1% versus the 99, that's a tough road to hoe.
What else can he do? I mean, sometimes mayors, they'll remember by the small things that they've done instead of the broad policy that they instituted during their administration. What else can he do that would say, hey, it'll be remembered by and still remain true to his progressive roots.
Yeah, I think that's really true. I mean, and I think those are the kind of things I'm talking about. I think that a successful mayoralty is really one at the margins. When you choose a signature issue that you're going to try to deliver on that may not even be enormously impactful on everybody's lives, but which sends a message that this is the kind of city I want to have. The living wage is one of those. You know, even though the number of people affected by it might not be that large, if he gets and sustains a living wage, that'll send a big message as to the kind of city that he wants to have. The same way that Michael Bloomberg sent a message about public health when his first big fight with the city council was to win the smoking ban, which
I'm glad.
which was a good thing. And I think even though the immediate impact of it was modest, everybody said, oh, this is different. You know, this mayor actually went up against a powerful lobby, where they were very powerfully represented at that point in the city council, and won.
Mm-hmm. Now, let's go back a little bit to the campaign. How was he able to rally all these minority groups around his candidacy?
He was the last man standing. I think that's true to some extent. I mean, it's interesting. You know, Bill Thompson and John Liu, you know, the Asian candidate and the black candidate, reasonably should have been entitled to that minority support. And I think that if John Liu had not been so hobbled by the campaign finance scandal, he would have been a formidable candidate against all the others in that race. But from the starting gate, there was no way he could get any headway in the race. And so even though I think that he had probably, in terms of when you went to a John Liu rally, it really was the gorgeous mosaic of New York. I mean, you saw large numbers of Latinos, you saw large numbers of African Americans, you saw huge numbers of Asians, and he had become a rallying point for them. But he got taken out of the picture. Bill Thompson never really grasped the possibility to be the leader of either African Americans or Latinos, despite late inning efforts that he made to do it, simply because he doesn't seem to have the fire in the belly to really muster up that support. You know, he had a chance with Stop and Frisk, and his first words about Stop and Frisk were very mild. It took him a while to sort of build up a head of steam and to say, well, it's my son too, and I have to worry about this for my own family, it's personal. But he didn't get that way for a while. And in the meantime, there's Bill de Blasio. He's married to a black woman who has 2 black kids and who was able to say very clearly what his position was on this Stop and Frisk, the impact that he thought it had in the city. And so eventually, when everything else had played out, he was the last man standing.
And how much is this was anti-status quo, i.e. Bloomberg, than it was for de Blasio?
No, I think it's huge. I think that de Blasio was the right man at the right time. And it's interesting, you know, his slogan of this is a tale of 2 cities.
It's pretty old.
Is such a mirror of
Freddie Ferrer.
Freddie Ferrer said it in 2001. He said, there's 2 New Yorks, and I come from the other New York. And when Freddie Ferrer said it, everybody, including the New York Times, which wrote some pretty tough stories about it, suggested that what he was talking about was minority New Yorkers as opposed to low-income New Yorkers. And he wasn't. He was simply talking then about what was already a big income gap. And it wasn't until a white guy, Bill de Blasio, stands up and says it, and he can more or less do it without getting the same concerns and the same worries that, oh, is he just talking about his people? Well, no, he was talking about all of us. But, I mean, that's one of the curious things about Bill de Blasio's whole position, was that he was able to sort of stand on the shoulders of other people who'd gone before him, sort of putting forth that vision of how the city had become increasingly split along income lines, and not be accused of doing it for racial reasons.
What do you think will be his biggest challenge moving forward?
Well, he's got to deal with education, too. We haven't even talked about that. I mean, that's going to be, you know, Michael Bloomberg said that he should measure me as an education mayor, and he certainly was able to do some things that certainly changed the way in which education is administered in this city. But in terms of the net results, I think we're still waiting to figure out whether or not we did really benefit from all the changes he made. So Bill de Blasio is going to be measured by the same standard.
And anything that he can do to really, like you said, put education on the right path.
Well, one of the things he's going to do right away, which will make a big difference, is he's going to include parents. And I think that was probably the single biggest failure in the Bloomberg administration's education policy, was to basically decide that the way that parents had previously been included on local school board panels, we're going to do away with all that. That's just patronage stuff. We don't need to do it that way. We can have administrators who care about their school districts. They'll be efficient. There'll be great, competent leaders, and that'll be enough to get us over. And when parents tried to object to things, they really didn't have a forum to do it on. So right out of the box, if Bill de Blasio figures out a way to actually channel
Empower.
parents' grievances into effective ways so they feel represented, he'll be way ahead of the game.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Tom. Tom Robbins, thanks for joining us.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Still to come, an international campaign sparks a heated debate about gender equality. Before that, Abby Ishola has some other news.
Thanks, Gary. Here's a look at some headlines from New York's ethnic and community media. From the Amsterdam News, construction workers of color, especially immigrants, have a greater chance of falling to their death at construction sites than other workers. According to a study conducted by the Center of Popular Democracy, immigrant workers make up 74% of fatal falls in the city, with most incidents taking place in Queens and Brooklyn. The study explains that this happens because many undocumented and immigrant workers tend to work for smaller non-union construction companies that take shortcuts on worker safety. The Bronx Academy of Arts and Dance has been forced out of its home of 15 years. The organization, also known as BAD, moved into the iconic 104-year-old banknote building on Garrison Avenue in Hunts Point years before it was purchased by Taconic Investment Partners. The real estate firm recently doubled the Academy's rent, forcing BAD to move into its new home on the grounds of St. Peter's Episcopal Church. Members of the organization told the Hunts Point Express that their case is another example of wealthy real estate firms driving out arts organizations across the city. Several Irish groups are trying to find a solution for the growing number of suicides related to depression in their community. Irish Central reports that the stigma against getting help for depression is leading to an increase in these cases. Leaders at the Iceland Irish Community Center say there may be more suicide cases than they know of. The organization and others that serve the Irish community now offer suicide prevention programs that include free counseling with social workers and workshops on meditation and healing. Polish businesses in Greenpoint are making an effort to cater to the changing face of the neighborhood. Greenpoint was once an area dominated by Poles, but has now become an area changed by gentrification. Polish businesses that remain in the area are catering to multicultural customers in order to stay afloat. Many are hiring staff that speak at least 2 languages, and some are making high-quality products available for purchase. Novogenic spoke to several business owners in the area who have successfully adjusted to the neighborhood's new demographics. And finally, Voices of New York profiled members of the Hawaiian community about how they're maintaining their culture in the city. Crystalline Costa, owner of the Onamea restaurant on Havemeyer Street, was surprised that there weren't any restaurants serving authentic Hawaiian cuisine in the city, so she decided to dig up old family recipes to fill the void. Kaina Kwenga keeps the culture alive by providing hula lessons in the city. Halawai, a community organization that formed 7 years ago, offers hula and ukulele workshops, concerts, and language classes. Though Hawaiians typically move to California or Las Vegas, 4,000 people moved from Hawaii to New York between 2006 to 2009. That number doubled from 2009 to 2012, according to the U.S. Census Bureau. Those were just a few headlines from New York's ethnic and community media. Independent Sources will be back right after this.
Welcome back. A UN Women digital campaign on gender equality has sparked a worldwide conversation. The campaign features women of various ethnicities with offensive Google autocomplete phrases superimposed over their mouths. The phrases are based on searches dated March 9, 2013, and range from a number of negative sentiments to stereotypes about women's rights and behavior. Zyphus LeBrun sat down with Nanette Braun of UN Women to speak about the origins of the campaign and the reaction so far.
Nanette, thank you for joining us in the studio today.
Thanks so much for having me.
All right, so let's talk a little bit about this campaign. Let's talk about how the campaign started initially.
As a matter of fact, the campaign started with the ad agency. Ogilvy developed the idea, the Dubai office of Ogilvy developed the idea for us and approached us with this idea after they had come across these Google searches, which are, of course, surprising and quite shocking if you want. And we thought that the concept was very strong indeed, and I think the viral spread of the ads and of the whole campaign testifies to the strengths of this concept. So we decided to collaborate for this campaign and take them up on this really great idea.
Now let's talk a little bit about some of these Google searches that you see in the ad campaign. For instance, one of the searches basically says women need to be put in their place, and also to something as simple as women cannot be trusted or women cannot speak in church. What are some of the reaction been to statements like that on Google?
As a matter of fact, there are even stronger statements like that. Women should not have rights, women should be slaves. And I think the reason why this campaign has created so much attention and such a really global debate, and it has sparked a global debate online and in the media about women's rights, about women's empowerment and gender equality, is that these searches come as a shock. I think it comes as a shock to many people that what you see as popular opinion expressed to a certain extent, of course, in these searches is so negative, is so discriminatory, and it goes as far as an outright denial of rights to women. And I think what we are seeing is that there is really the need for a global debate on these issues, and this is what these campaigns have created. And we are very heartened by the debate, because we know that this debate is needed, and to a certain extent UN Women, the UN rights, the UN agency tasked with working on women's empowerment, women's rights and gender equality, is, of course, we are working on all of these issues. And if you want, the campaign supports us in furthering this debate and creating awareness on the barriers that women are still facing.
Now, I'll get back to one point you just made in a minute, but I wanted to ask, what's been Google's response? Have they responded in a good way to all of this?
Google, we have not had any response from Google. And also, I think what is very important to stress that this is not a campaign about Google. It is a campaign based on a search function of one search engine. So in a way, that is the tool that is applied, but it's not a campaign about Google. It's not a campaign that actively involves Google, but it basically, it does take advantage of a search engine. It could have been another search engine too. So I think it's very important to stress that fact.
Absolutely. Now, the organization is quite young still, about 3 to 4 years old. So far, has this campaign created the most buzz for you guys as regards to your mission?
I would say that in terms of a campaign, this one has definitely created the greatest buzz. And what you said is correct. We are the youngest member of the UN family. We were established by the UN General Assembly in 2010 and began our work in 2011. And we were established to work on overcoming the economic, social, political issues and barriers that women still face worldwide. And we do this through programs in countries. We do this by working with governments to develop norms, standards, international policies that can help to advance or to overcome these barriers. And the campaign as such has certainly been very helpful in sparking the debate on women's rights issues globally. And in terms of a campaign for us in the past 2.5 years, it's certainly been, certainly has created the biggest buzz, yes.
I noticed there are several ethnicities in the campaign. Was that specifically something that you guys wanted to have, various faces of women as part of the campaign?
We do work globally. So, I mean, variety, diversity is always something that is very important for us. So in that sense, yes, it's certainly an issue at whatever campaign we would run and develop would always have diversity, yes.
Is there a possibility of this campaign being extended? I know that I had read that there might be an expansion of the campaign. Are you guys, how much are you guys looking into that?
As a matter, we are looking into that right now, and I think I can say with all honesty that we have been surprised and incredibly positively surprised by the uptake of the campaign. The fact that it has gone viral has really created, as you said, such a huge buzz that we are now looking also together with Ogilvy, how can we put this forward? How can we take this to the next step? That being said, and also how can we develop language versions, for example, because searches differ slightly, and of course, I mean, an audience, a global audience in different parts of the world where you have different languages are spoken are interested in this too. That being said, no matter where we take it now, it has already created this incredible attention to the issues. So in that sense, it has already fully served its function. And we are very, very happy about that.
Apart from this program, what are you guys working on now as regards to, drumming up some more attention to issues faced by women?
Well, as I said, we are working very strongly on an operational basis. We work very strongly globally to enhance women's political participation and leadership in all spheres of society. We are working to enhance women's economic opportunities, because this is, of course, a precondition for empowerment. And also we are focusing very strongly on ending violence against women, because this is there's a huge issue, a pandemic of violence really that affects up to 1 in 3 women worldwide, with enormous ramifications, not only for the individual women who are being abused, but also for society as a whole. It comes at enormous emotional cost for society as a whole, and also economic costs. So we are working on these issues very strongly, and will of course continue to do so. In terms of really highlighting the whole range of issues that still need to be debated or that are still under debate, we will next year start focusing on the 20th anniversary of the Beijing Platform for Action. In 1995, the women and men from around the world convened in Beijing on the 4th World Women's Conference, and a really forward-looking agenda, platform for action, was developed at that time. And while we see a lot of progress on many fronts, we are unfortunately still far from seeing this Beijing Platform for Action being fully implemented. So starting next year on International Women's Day, and then leading up to 2015 to the 20th anniversary, we will have a very, very strong focus on looking into the what was called the 12 critical areas of concern highlighted in the Beijing Platform for Action, looking into where do we stand with them, and to continue the debate on really what does it need now in order to finally say the Beijing Platform for Action is being fully implemented, and we have basically achieved the realization of women's rights, women's empowerment, and gender equality.
Nanette, I just want to say thanks so much. Interesting conversation, and I hope we can probably pick up a little bit more about your organization's work in the future. Thank you so much for being with us.
It would be my pleasure. Thank you so much.
When we come back, paving the way for a new generation of ballerinas of color. Finally, from us, the American Ballet Theater is trying to change the face of modern ballet in the United States. The ABT recently launched Project Plie, a scholarship program that will provide training for more dancers and tutors of color. Zafis Lebrun tells us more in this report.
Épaulement, 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 presentation, presentation, and.
Erica Lal says she's been dancing for as long as she can remember. The 15-year-old who grew up just outside of Houston in Cypress, Texas, is one of the first recipients of a scholarship offered by the American Ballet Theater under their Project Plie.
I feel like it's a great responsibility, and it's a great program that's going to help young children of color and ethnic diversity have opportunities to train when they couldn't, because they get scholarships and they can train with the JKO school.
JKO, or the Jacqueline Kennedy Onassis School, is ABT's training ground here in New York. It's just one of the locations around the country where students like Erica, as well as instructors of color, will be tutored.
So the first tier is scholarships. We're identifying talented kids of color from around the country and either bringing them here or providing scholarships on site. The second is we have a large teacher training program where we certify ballet teachers around the world. And what we want to do is identify talented teachers who are of color or working in communities of color and provide them additional tools so that they can provide really tremendous training to the kids in their community.
Rachel Moore created Project Plie. She based it on the STEP program she worked on in Boston that sought to get more public school children involved with classical music. She was once a professional dancer and says the dance world has been in need of some diversity for a long time.
I was a professional dancer 30 years ago, and since I was a dancer to now, I've not seen a huge change in the diversity of the dancers on stage, and it seems like it is now the time that ballet really start looking like the country it exists in.
Moore says there are many reasons why ballet has been restrictive over the years, including the high price of ballet shoes, tutus, and classes, as well as prejudice, something Erica Lal experienced herself.
Sometimes I feel like I'm kind of pushed to the side because of my color, or in the past I have been. And some people don't realize that it's our talent and not just our color. Yeah, it's been hard kind of, but when I came here I felt like they don't care about color or anything.
I think that there are people old school who are fearful that audiences won't accept dancers of color, which I think is completely not true.
What's also not true, Moore says, is the notion that white dancers are more likely to have the slim figures required of ballerinas.
We audition probably 5,000 children each year for our programs. The vast majority are white, and most of them don't have the right body. So it's not about the color of your skin. It's really about a very specific aesthetic that can be found in every population.
ABT is taking the lead with this initiative at an opportune time. Congress recently named them the country's national ballet company, and Moore believes that sort of exposure could expand Project Plie internationally.
We have probably anywhere between 20 and 30 scholarships right now, and I would love to expand that tremendously as the funding is available. And I think that as we get bigger, we'll have more and more partners to be able to do that. Because it's not just about scholarships at ABT, it's scholarships at all these other partner companies, because we all are seeking the same goal.
As for Erica, she's got her own goals.
Well, I'd love to be with American Ballet Theater in the company. I'd love to be a principal dancer. And I guess my dream role is Juliet in Romeo and Juliet. And then I'd love to inspire children, inspire people, eventually become a teacher and pass down my knowledge. So.
Zyphus Lebrun, Independent Sources.
That's our show this week. Thanks for staying tuned. Till next time, be independent-minded.